everybody, welcome to Dork Tales Expo. This is panel number 1, how to be a GM, and so can you. I love awkward titles. So hi everybody, I'm Kelly. I'm the Dungeon Master, Storyteller, Game Master, and Forever DM here at Dork Tales. So guys, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce ourselves, and then we are going to start talking about things. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Robin, you are our moderator right now, so keep an eye on what is coming in, and if you can assemble questions, that would be amazing. Also, hello everybody in chat. Thanks for coming out today. I hope that you enjoyed this event that we're putting on, and don't forget that if you like what we do here, you can always give us a follow. You can give us a sub on YouTube. You can give us a sub on here if you want. Or, even better, you can donate a little bit of money to Extra Life. It'll be in our name. We get credit, and kids get help, which we're pretty cool with. All right, so without further ado, let's introduce ourselves kind of in this fashion. What your name is? Hi, I'm Kelly. Strong introduction. I'm a professional storyteller and professor of storytelling occasionally. I have been playing tabletop role-playing games for about the last, going on 20 years now. Actually, this year it will be 20 years that I've been running tabletop games. And then perhaps your favorite systems or stories. I personally like deep narratives that cover the gamut of human emotions. Everything from Dungeons & Dragons to high fantasy epics to my favorite game, Age of the Ascension, which is a game about metaphysics and graduate level role-playing on like 3 different 3D chess levels. But I also like just going the pew-pews and shooting stuff. You can find me on twitch.tv dorktales, which you already have, which is kind of a cheat, but hey, there you go. Be sure to like and follow our social media. And I'll pass the torch over to Christine.
Hello, I'm Christine. Can't remember half of what Kelly went through on his introduction.
Just introduce yourself.
I'm just gonna wing it. So I have, I think, GM'd 2 games. None of them finished, but so I'm a new.
Well, the session's finished.
DMing. Well, life got in the way of those ones. But I've been playing role-playing games since about 2008.
Okay. What's your favorite game?
That's not an easy question.
What is one of your favorite games?
I really enjoy D&D.
Okay. Sounds good.
But I gotta say, Mage.
Mage is great.
Mage is.
And where can people find you if they like you?
They can find me on twitch.tv/LadyLiliana, as it says right below my name. I mainly stream Guild Wars. I'm working on Undertale again, but I still haven't beat that one fight.
Because
so.
Muffet is hard.
Muffet kicks my ass.
Wait, which one? Oh, Muffet. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I've tried about 3 or 4 times of several hours each to beat that fight.
Not easy.
I spent about 8 hours trying to beat that fight, and I still haven't done it, and I'm kind of giving up.
All right. Gonna pass the torch down over to Amy. Hi, Amy.
Oh, hello. I'm Amy. You can also find me at twitch.tv/paradoxicalghoul, or, just call me Ghoul, whatever. Your friendly neighborhood bog ghoul. It's good times. I also do streaming of like Guild Wars and other games, depending on what I feel like. Sometimes Sims, sometimes Spore, sometimes Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines.
Well, you're gonna be waiting for 2 for a while.
I know, right? Yeah. That's okay. I've never actually finished Masquerade Bloodlines, so
Super
hey.
good.
Yeah, I'll get to it eventually. I'll finish it, I swear, I promise I will. But yeah, so I have DM'd a few things, mostly on the channel here for Extra Life. I've DM'd 2 games, and there's been a couple other one-shots here and there-ish. It's like, yeah, anyway. Also relatively new to this, but hopefully that will change. Hopefully
That's
I'll get more very
You
soon.
can help ask questions.
I can ask questions. I can ask a lot of questions.
You too, and Amy is going to be running the first. It's a limited run series that's coming to Dork Tales. It is the first not me ran series on Dork Tales, which except for charity events. So that's going to be like the first real one. You got your own spin-off,
Yeah.
Amy.
First spin-off, yay!
All right,
No pressure.
No it's fine.
No,
It's fine.
no pressure.
It'll be better than Straw.
I'm gonna pressure you.
Pressure.
Shut
Pressure
up,
them.
Tasha.
Hello, James.
Hello, Kelly.
and everyone else. Hello, I'm James. I have been a gamer for running games for more than 20 years now, I think. Yeah, it's going on for a long time. Unlike all these other wonderful people, I'm not a streamer. I'm like a streamer assistant. I kind of like I'm on other people's streaming stuff.
That's why I gave you my name. Like you're I'm just
totally.
double dipping on the advertising.
I will help other people. I might start doing some stuff with Mike sometime soon, so it might be kind of cool to do some of that stuff.
That'd be cool. McGee or Ilot?
McGee.
Okay.
We want to do some space engineers and stuff like that, so I'm
That's
looking
fair.
forward to trying.
That sounds about right.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be fun. Mage, D&D, Cyberpunk, Shadowrun. My list of games is endless. I have run a little bit of anything, many homebrew things. Yeah,
There you go.
it's pretty much it. Yeah.
Nice. All right. And hi, Tasha.
First up, do I have a filter on? I feel like I'm very bronzed in the Twitch.
It's just that you're just so naturally tanned, but potentially. Oh yeah, you do, because that's where James normally is.
But my name
apologies.
is Natasha. My Twitch is listed on the screen, but for full access to everything I do, my website is natashatuskovich.com/linktree, because I do many things, fashion, art, all sorts of things. I love RPGs because I've always been into stories and storytelling. And yeah, my favorite games are ones where it's about the narrative, it's about character development, and I love adapting like kind of random different worlds into games, which is why I'm also running the adapting pop culture panel with Kelly later today.
Woo, it's gonna be a lot of fun. We got to talk about like how to steal from J.K. Rowling and make it your own thing, and other fun topics.
If anyone ever deserved to be stolen from.
Oh no, Jim Butcher too. But hey.
Oh, that's better. I look less bronzed.
No, your makeup's on point. I was checking to see if you're in the makeup panel tomorrow, and you're not. Oh, you are. Cool.
Yeah.
Good. Because I was about to say, because if you're not, that's sad.
Oh, she absolutely is.
Okay, cool. And finally, in the corner, our good friend Bunny Hearted.
Hi,
Also-
I'm Emily. I'm a professional bunny fan. Very, very long time role-playing storyteller, fan of dorky things. I feel like Natasha, I am honestly the biggest fan of narrative-focused games. I like games that have mechanics that get out of my way, or mechanics that are there to help us collectively build a story together, or for me to tell a story to my cute dorky friends that they get to be a cool part of. Despite that, paradoxically, my favorite game is Eclipse Phase, which has mechanics that are
Nightmares.
sometimes a complicated jumble and sometimes nightmarish when it comes to character creation. But the way that game plays and the way that it can run is just amazing.
What is that
I've
game? I've
been
never heard
running
of it.
games for as long as I have known Kelly, which is like a decade, maybe a little bit more than that, really. And it's entirely, which side do you want? This side? I don't know what side you're on.
I'm like diagonally
It's entirely
behind.
your fault that it's entirely your fault that I'm a nerd. I blame you. I
Towards
blame
the
you for
red
all of
chair and
this.
up.
I blame
Technically,
you
it's
for all of
Bastion.
this.
I just dragged you further down the hole that they dug for you.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, you can find me at twitch.tv/bunnyhearted. I'm a VR tuber, which is why I'm a professional bunny here in VR. And I will be on a bunch of panels tomorrow talking about like inclusive spaces in gaming, as well as about like DM self-care later today, which I am excited for.
Now, one thing that I
don't
want
talk
you
too long. I can talk forever.
I know you can. You're very good at it. I know. This is why when we ever go out for coffee, it's just like a 6-hour ordeal. Because it's like a fencing match. I do want you to talk about during inclusion, if we have time, about VR and its uses in role playing. I don't know if that's quite on brand for this very vanilla panel we're doing right now, but the fact. So one of the things that you were doing, that you were telling me about, is you were looking at getting some gaming going up for people who are nonverbal.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that I want you to bring that up tomorrow. So can you please make a note of that? Because
Absolutely.
Sounds so cool.
There's a couple projects like that I'm working on or have done. So I think we can do a whole thing.
I think that the idea of bringing gaming and inclusion to people who you might normally not consider maybe partaking of the hobby, but also just you might just not consider the ramifications of some gaming elements is really important, and very, very important to me, because we just got a YouTube comment yesterday. I think you might have seen it in the group chat. but I've been trying to make sure that our D&D games are as descriptive as possible, not only because I hate using maps, because it's just a ton of busy work for me to do, and it's really boring for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, it's visually interesting, but it also means that when we port the audio out to podcast, people don't know what it spends the entire time, instead of being like, you run through the corridors, which are as wide as an ox's shoulders. As you push through, the slime slips beneath your feet, the skeleton lurches, you have really, versus, I moved through the hallway and hit the red one. You don't get anything through the podcast. And we got this comment on YouTube that said it was from someone who is a blind dungeon master. And they were commenting on how much they loved how descriptive we were and how it really helped them see the game. And I spent like 5 minutes crying about that. Like, I know, like, I was just, it's not because of the person, but because you don't realize when you're doing something good for someone. Anyway. So
absolutely, that's amazing. I didn't know that. I did not check the group chat because
do it's a really
doing boring bunny things. But that is so wonderful. That's got to feel amazing.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and just jump in and start talking about gaming systems and fun and role-playing. So if you're tuning in right now, this is about role-playing games, which are games where you play make-believe, sometimes with rules, sometimes with far less strict rules, and they're games sort of like good old Dungeons and Dragons, or any of those guys right there, or any of those guys over there. I've got quite a...
I'm not moving my camera, but I've got 2 shelves in my bookshelf full of your
This
books.
is why I have the virtual bookshelf, because otherwise it's just too much of a stack of books to show you. It's embarrassing. This is a smaller stack of books. It's fine. This is fine.
All right, so...
Stack right there.
So here's the deal. Let's fight. All right. I'm going to open this up because I will say that it feels really weird running a panel on role-playing games online, because in person we've been doing this as a group for about the past like 10 to 15 years, depending on which member you are. But now that you can see how we role-play and how we run games online, particularly at twitch.tv/dorktales or youtube.com/dorktales, it's weird to get all the net criticism, and one of the big things that I get, and I know that all of us are story gamers for the most part, is a misinterpretation of a rule. And I'm going to make 2 statements right now that I'm curious what your opinions are. 1, rules don't matter, and the internet can fight me. And 2, a quote from Matt Colville, who's a game developer and all-around really interesting guy to follow on YouTube. When a DM or GM misinterprets the rules, that's a feature, not a bug of the system. So that's my statement. What do you guys want to talk about? I want to hear your opinions.
Rules are a tool. You gotta be willing to use it however you need.
Okay.
And I would say, like, if the GM, DM, whatever, is making a snap interpretation to try and just keep the game moving instead of sitting there looking up the rules, as long as they're not screwing over their player horribly and being like, no, you can't do that because X, Y, Z sort of thing, like, that makes no sense, and just squashing an idea completely, yeah, it's a feature. It's like, okay, and then if we find out later that, hey, we screwed up that rule, we can either decide to home rule it and bring it forward as a home rule or house rule, or, okay, shit, we made a mistake, oh, that's how that actually works, oh, that makes sense, okay, we remember that now for the next time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. I feel like it requires communication. You can't just have you can make your own rules, you can interpret rules however you want, and that's, I think, like the group is empowered to do that, and the DM is especially empowered to do that. But I've definitely had and heard stories about DMs who are doing that without consulting players, or without making those rules like publicly visible and talking about any changes compared to the core rule book. And that can be really frustrating as a player to be in somewhere where you don't know how the rules work because it hasn't been talked about. Like, is flanking a thing? I don't know, but you should probably talk about it because it depends on your group.
And consistency.
Yeah. My thought was more that if in the moment, shit, we can't remember how that works and can't find it quickly, just
Yeah, instead of debating for 10 minutes about it.
move the actual story along instead of derailing.
So what we've instituted in the last couple of years on Dork Tales and prior is usually quick name the Chris policy. So whenever our buddy Chris Blog is in a game, what we do is if I can't find a rule inside of 30 seconds, I turn and say, Chris, look it up. And it is his job to let me know by the end of game, like check it, because he really loves looking things up. Like he really should have been
he's good
like
at that.
librarian or a lawyer. But he writes it down, and by the end of game, like when we're doing XP, telling that stuff, he goes, "Oh, by the way, this was the actual rule versus your call." And then we decide, okay, cool. Next time we'll know. On points of that, one of the things that we do on Dork Tales for homebrew stuff is we have a wiki. So all of our homebrew rules are on a wiki, and it's really easy to have a conversation with your players. We did it last night before Reign of Emrys. So for all of our D&D content of the channel, every game I'm going to put it to a vote at the beginning of the session, but we're going to start doing death saves, which is, if you're unfamiliar with D&D, when your character is harmed and goes down, they get 3 chances to come back to life, basically. They roll a d20. If it's above 10, 3 times, then they wake up. If it's below 10 3 times, non-consecutively, they die. We had a vote that the players are no longer rolling their own. I am rolling them for them. To increase the tension, because you never know when they're going to die.
I saw that post.
Right? So
Ooh, I like that. That's kind of fun.
But
I
before
saw that
game,
too. That was really cool.
like on stream, I said, "Hey guys, this is my idea. These are why I think it's good. Does anybody have a problem with that? If so, send me a private message, and then we'll vote on this. And we can vote publicly or privately, depending on whether or not people have reservations. Because never put your players on the spot on something awkward like that. A lot of gamers are people who are doing it for fun, but a lot of people are using it as an outlet when they struggle with like depression, anxiety, things like that. So putting them on the spot outside of game in front of everybody can be very taxing. So but we have all this technology. It's really easy just to send a quick instant message.
That's a big advantage of doing gaming online. I've noticed is that you have secret channels for communication too. It makes doing evil schemes a little bit easier than it has been in the past. You're not passing a secret note.
Yeah, the little
which has
slips of
been
paper.
pretty fun.
So
I mean, there's lots of disadvantages to it too, but that's a nice bonus. Like, I guess use the mechanics available to you, right?
James, did you weigh in on rules?
Pretty much all I was thinking was from a a game design perspective, right? Like rules are always intended there to basically just bound the experience and then try to direct people in kind of the kind of channel that the game was designed to be played through. But they're never meant to. But when something subjective like storytelling, right? Like all that kind of idea is subjective to the group you're in. It's whatever makes the best experience. That was always the purpose of rules. If they start getting in the way or start diminishing the experience, they got to go or they got to change. And that would be part of like the trial and error that you normally go through a game design experience with. Then yeah, that'd be expected.
Well, I agree completely with that, because the rules were developed through a bunch of people playtesting them to balance the game, but that was balanced with specific groups of people. And if those groups are wildly different than your group, then it's not going to be balanced anymore.
Yep.
And I'm a big fan of breaking the game. One of the things that I'm doing in our main campaign right now on Dork Tales Shards of Nirn, it's supposed to be a campaign that goes to 20. It's supposed to be an epic level. I told them they'd be punching out gods by the end of the game, and that's so we're working on it.
I want that.
You guys are level 11 now, but at level 10, I gave everybody in the party a special ability, like a superpower, baby superpowers. Like the ranger is so goth that he can shadow step now, or Tia, you can talk to any animal because you're a druid. Any creature that is bioorganic, you cannot talk to cubes. I mean, you can talk to them; they just won't understand you.
And I won't understand them if they talk back. Oh, Jesus!
I don't know what that is, but things like
I especially like that for. Oh, sorry. I especially like that for because it eliminates any sense of like the expected, right? Like it kind of turns that up. So there's always that X factor you don't know that might be creeping up on you that might change your entire perspective on a game.
So here's a question I have for you. Since we're already talking about rules, let's talk about quick hacks. What is your favorite thing? So name a couple of things that you think make game more fun that are just little tweaks that you can do. I'll start off with a really quick one. Roll your attack and damage at the same time if you're playing D&D. It cuts down your rolling by half. Especially when you're running on a stream, my God, that speeds things up. Does anybody else have a quick hack that they like to employ or encourage?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's along the same lines as that, but honestly, get yourself a pad of paper. On it, do it, and write out what your roles are. Like, not the number, because that changes, and if you don't know what goes into that number, it's really, really hard to recalculate if you're new to the game or not, or just maybe you've been a little while since playing, so you've forgotten, shit, do I add dex to that? Like, what do I add to that roll? So break it down with, my attack roll is a d20 plus proficiency plus this for this particular weapon. Just have it written out, and then have like yourself a little cheat sheet where you've got all your current numbers.
Yeah, like I try to add all that into my little PDFs, and like the little tiny mini text fields end up like being like so long because I've like put the formula in there.
Yeah. Or, like,
I
have
think
another
that's really
document or something
beneficial
for it.
for speeding up a game. Exactly. Like, I don't know if it's a quick hack, but if you're in combat, like when other people are taking a turn, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's when you should be thinking about what you're going to be doing and figuring out what roles you need, what rules you need, so that when it's your turn, you are ready to roll dice right then.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel like a quick hack so much as a thing that will make your DM freaking love you.
It's such a good practice,
But
because
I
then
highly encourage you to do it.
because then you're the person ordering McDonald's, right? Can I get a
Yeah, exactly.
That's me.
Fireball.
Don't call me out like that.
I mean,
Can I get a fireball?
that be flexible though, because if you make a plan of, oh, based on this stuff, this is exactly what I'm going to do, and then somebody co-ops you by changing the situation,
So
absolutely. You have to pay
be ready to
attention.
have
But you-
something you can do.
Backup plan.
Yeah.
It
so
might not be the coolest thing that you were going to do. Looking at you, Amy.
I will say, guys, I don't know if you know, but Old World of Darkness, like we're talking like Vampire the Masquerade Revised, the
Oh, that was
core
the coolest shit.
The core rules actually, so initiative in normal games is you roll a dice, highest initiative, you go down the checklist. That's not the way it works in Chronicles, or pardon me, in Old World of Darkness. Everybody plays it that way, but the actual rules go like this. Y'all roll initiative. Cool, cool, cool. Lowest initiative declares their action. So, cool.
Yes.
Amy, you're going to go punch James. All right, James, it's your initiative. Amy's going to punch you. What do? Because you have initiative.
I'm coming for you.
Run
James.
the fuck away.
Yeah, right? So then we start, you go to the top of the list, and then we go
Amy's
back
crazy.
down. And if your action is no longer available, you have to make a willpower roll to change your action, or you lose your turn. That's the way the original dice mechanics are, which is too much rolling. It's way too much rolling, in my opinion. As someone who's,
it does
Because you have to
kind of
double
make
do every
sense,
action.
but
because technically you're all doing your action at the same time, but one person has a better chance of reacting to what you're doing because they have a higher
Yeah.
initiative. So I do get that they're trying to make it as real as possible.
yeah,
It's
also
hard to do in this context.
they
I
also
just-
had the ties go to the offender rule, if I'm not mistaken, which is something that I only suggest in games where you want things to be brutal on a player, or to be brutal in general.
May I also point out the agony that was mage with the time rewind mechanics, or something like if you're like highest initiative and you're like, I teleport everyone away.
I totally didn't do
And
that.
the entire turn just out the door.
Yeah, you got to prepare for that. Like,
Magic.
do you know how hard it is to make
Responsible with it.
a murder mystery when people have phenomenal cosmic powers? Okay,
Oh,
GMing tip number 1, okay? Say your players have powers, D&D or otherwise, right? So say they have a power, we're going to talk mage because it's macro level magic, where they can just go, I look back through time and see who murdered him. Okay, how do you stop this from working? There are a couple of ways. The basic storyteller GM would go, there's a ward up, it doesn't work. The advanced GM says, cool, he was wearing a mask. Because you're literally looking back in time.
Well,
like,
then
Was it
the
like
good-
obfuscating
really
and then
good
hiding behind
advanced
something?
DM
Yeah.
oh god.
is like, he's wearing a mask with a hood, and he turns and looks you right in the eyes.
Yeah. I have made people poop
Kelly has
themselves.
done that.
Yeah. Oh, getting back to where we actually kind of came off of that whole think about your turn before it's your turn.
Yeah.
On the DM side, telling whoever it is who's up on base. Kind of like it's your turn,
Oh,
you're
that's a good
next,
idea.
right? So it's always that cue to be
So
like,
initiative
okay,
trackers
that's
are interesting. Does anybody use them? Because I don't. I have basically I make a checklist. Here, I'll show you. This is my checklist. This is my fight list from last night. I literally just take a pad of paper, draw some lines, and go down the list, and hope I don't skip anybody. I also write in pen. Don't write in pen. Don't be like me. Be better.
No.
I don't want you to be like me. I want you to be better. If you're not a good enough DM with the book, you're without the book. You're not a good enough DM with the book. So anyway, so what do you guys do for initiative?
I like to put the character sheets of the players in order, and then I can just flip the sheets as it goes.
Ooh,
Is this for running online or in person or both?
Both.
Oh, really? You keep a copy of them right in front of you?
Oh, and if I have the time to print them out.
Oh, that's nice. How do you?
Honestly, I kind of use a similar version to yours. Instead of drawing lines, I just have line paper, put the people's names in the right order, with like what their initiative was next to it, and then I just do hash, like what is it? 4 slashes and then a diagonal across it. Count.
I have like a spinny initiative thing from Exalted, and I don't know that I would recommend using that for initiative, but I like it for pointing at who's in initiative. So I would put like a little tag or something in that, and then just be able to point through, and then have a really like tactile visual thing for who's in the initiative queue.
Is that
Kind of nice. It makes it easier for me than flipping between various text windows and checking on it. And if you're in person, then it makes it really, really clear too, because everyone can see it.
One that I really enjoyed was Deadlands. I think it was Deadlands that did it, where it's basically it's just the players and then the DM. The players can work out whatever order that they want to go in. Just like, okay, who's next? And you just volunteer, and once you guys are all done, then I get my go, and then we just go back and forth like that.
Vampire the Masquerade
like
5th
that.
edition has a really an interesting mechanic in it for initiative, which it doesn't have initiative. It is, where does the action start? Cool. Amy is punching James. Nice. All right, Amy and James, we resolve you. Then we move outward to the next logical person who should be doing something. And then you kind of keep like undulating through these points of action. Because then it's like, oh, Tasha's going to jump on James's back because nobody hits Amy and gets away with it, right? And then
I'm the one getting punched.
and then Millie's like, no, I'm going to go steal a hot dog from the hot dog stand over on the corner.
Nom, 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 nom,
What?
nom.
How did you get that so
I was
quickly?
prepared for that. I was specifically prepared for this.
Oh,
You just like fucking blew all of our minds.
Ugh.
Ellie, you forgot to time ward again.
I forgot to tie. Damn it. Millie, knock it off.
I also have like tiny friends with me. This is a very complicated situation over here. It's getting weird.
Little cards.
Popped in too to say hi to me.
So Streamlord D
Yeah,
brought
budding crimes
up
indeed.
that some people you can hang things off your DM screen. There's also ways to do it yourself using some people put magnet strips up and then print off their character pictures and print them on magnets so they just go.
Oh, yeah, that's a nice way to do it. Yeah.
I regularly, that wouldn't work for me. We've had combats on Dork Tales with like, last episode of Ram of the Frostmaiden had 60 combatants in it or more. So that would just be too many magnets.
So many.
Insane Clown Posse would have to show up and help me with
don't
that.
have 60 combatants in a place.
It wasn't my
Well,
fault.
no,
Rime
so
of
I
the
feel like
Frostmaiden has a battle with 60 people in it. And the players went the wrong door. It happened. And I'm like, crap, it's a module. Modules.
Do you do that where every single like NPC is like a separate initiative too? You're not doing them as groups.
Okay,
'Cause
let's
I
talk-
would immediately turn them into groups because
I
know
turn them
how
into
they-
groups as well,
Or
but there is
squads.
also something really bad about that because one of our players rolled beneath the group. So in
Right,
that
okay.
case, I tend to split them up into like the left rank or the left side, the right side, and give them two different initiatives. Okay, let's talk about large groups of enemies. So everybody who here uses goons and mooks and different classes of enemy.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but I
I mean,
will.
but I'm often playing systems that have that built in.
It's such a good, use it for D&D too, use it for any system where there's combat.
I don't know what this is.
Okay, James or Millie, go ahead.
Well, at least in mine, it's usually like goons or mooks are basically kind of enemies that have. They're more there for thematic purpose than really kind of structural. They're to show off and have. It'd be fun for the players. So it'll be like the guardsmen. They just kind of tear through right as they're like running by. You don't keep
they're the
hit, you don't-
stormtroopers.
Yeah, you don't give them hit points. If they take a hit, they're done. And they they fall down and Wilhelm scream and all that. And you just have fun with it. And you basically just focus all the real kind of crunch on the important fights, like the bosses and the mini bosses, and yeah.
Or if there's like a squadron of goons, then I group them up into like a larger stat block.
Oh, yeah.
So that I only have to worry about one dice roll, but they're all acting together as like a squad of elite stormtroopers that can't aim for anything. But it's fine.
Conan was great for that. I loved Conan's system for that.
That's true.
Where they basically treated like a unit, like a group of goons as basically like a single creature, and instead of having hit points, it had guys. So when you ran over there and you chop down two guys, like you do 2 hit points of damage or whatever to it, that's two guys, and they get killed.
Hit points are much more spread across in this. It's more like tens of hit points in D&D for the same effect. For those of you who are
Lots of systems have that built in. Like even Dungeon World has that. If you've got a squadron of goons, then like you have a horde of the undead. That's an enemy. It gets an initiative roll. Like Age of Rebellion has this too. Tons of systems do this to try to make it easier for the DM to not have to roll 60 NPCs in a giant mob combat.
Yeah,
but still to provide like a challenge and the narrative, right?
Well,
because if you're fighting 10 stormtroopers, it doesn't make sense to kill them all at once. You're chewing them to bits over time.
Exactly, and it makes people feel cool. Actually, I threw some minions in a couple of games ago, and actually, Christine, you got to nuke like all but one of them in a single move because they were just skeletons, but they were gonna swarm and stab the crap out of people. And Christine was a cleric, so just used turn undead, and like 9 out of 10 of them exploded. It was just the one guy who got a nat 20 on his save. Because I rolled a save for each. You don't have to. But for this one, I was like, oh, I want to see who saves. And it was one guy who was just like... And then just ran away. Like a skeleton minion with an intelligence of 1 was like, I don't know much, but I know I don't want to be here.
I know that is good and I am not. So I'll see you later.
I guess that's another thing. So what do you guys think about... let's talk about NPCs. Let's talk about NPC reactions to stimuli. So I know a lot of games, and James, you were in a game that we ran a Starfinder module, and I have a particular problem with modules. In this Starfinder module, it was basically Star Wars. You were a crew that had to deliver something to a world that was being overrun by space fascists. And the space fascists, the Imperial Aslanti Empire, that's too many empires in that sentence somewhere, basically had taken over this world and were like, subjugating all the people. But there were only like 3 actual commanders. Everyone else were like literally cadets, like 16-year-old kids. Yeah.
They were like, it's a training mission. We're going to go take over that planet.
Yeah, come on, kids, grab your lunch. We're going to go subjugate the masses, right? Which is a cool idea. Except that the way they were written in the book, I mean, it was a cool module except for this one thing. And it is, these 16-year-old Aslanti kids will fight to the death with no give. They will not surrender. They will not break. They will all die. And I'm like, these are 16-year-old kids. They may think that they will fight to the death.
Yeah.
The second like half of their friends die.
I was a 9-foot-tall lizard guy, just
with a chain gun.
These guys, with a chain gun as well, right? Like, why is anyone standing here? Everybody.
No one was standing for long, including you.
Oh yeah, no, I got knocked down a good number.
He botched a few times and blew himself up, but he was fine. He had enough hit points.
It's what you do. It was crutch. That was his purpose.
When did fascism become?
That's interesting too, because if that's what they want the mechanics to be, is that the mechanics are like you're chewing through a horde of 16-year-old brainwashed militant goons for whatever reason, then why are they not running away? Have they been threatened with something? Do they have stimulants running through their system? What is the narrative reason for this mechanic? And if they don't have a narrative reason to back up the mechanic, it feels so freaking weird. Like they don't feel like people. They feel like video game enemies where you're like, people, they're just here to shoot at because it's fun to point and click.
I feel like that was almost a tack on at the end. Oh, sorry.
I'm such a huge fan of being able to talk to enemies instead of just having to fight them every time. And like, depending on your GM, like some GMs are like, yeah, sure, you can talk to them. Like they'll listen to you. And sometimes it's like, no, they're just going to fight you, period. And it's like, okay, like seriously, every enemy is not willing to listen ever. Like it's nice to have a balance where it's like, no, this is a real person, like a real thinking creature or whatever, who's like, yeah, willing to maybe discourse about something.
Well, and if you're fighting, that doesn't mean to the death. Like if you're in an actual fight, especially like I feel this is a thing in like bar fights. Like if you ever have a bar fighting game, people are like, I take him down or I'm gonna fight to the death in this bar fight. I'm like, no, you're not. You're gonna get punched twice and then you're gonna be like, this isn't worth the beer.
Oh yeah, reining in players who are sometimes a little kill happy. It's like, no, let's think about what would actually happen in this situation, and depending on whether the game is what style game it is.
I think even then you have a bunch of people who are like, oh well, I beat the guy. I'm playing a paladin, right? And I beat the guy into the ground with my sword. I'm like, the dude stole a purse. Like, are you sure you just don't want to apprehend him and turn him over to the police, or like
Full RoboCop here.
Yeah, right. I mean, RoboCop would bring them to the cops. It's roleplay.
If you're being worse than RoboCop, let's rethink.
Rethink this. So
Thus was forged the RoboCop rule.
But when it comes to like how your NPCs react to your players, also it's like have a plan for where you want the story to go. And if it makes more sense for this character that they're talking to, because you never know what one they're going to seize on. It's going to be the one you made up for flavor for like 5-second interaction, and they're going to be like, I'm talking to him.
Needs more
I'm
Harwar.
going to ignore the guy in the corner who obviously has the information I want.
Speaking of which, Manolin art is absolutely
That could be a
correct.
big conversation.
Well, we're going to get to running in a second. We're
Sorry,
going to talk
you
about
go
running.
first, yeah.
That's a great one. I'm going to write that down
Gonna go back
next
to
to the
books. There
RoboCop
we
rule.
go.
But like, if you have kind of a plan, or at least not even a plan, like you don't need to be really focused on this person can tell you the right information, unless you really want to give them like.
Unless that character's
going
gonna be important later on.
Information. But if you have a rough plan of where you want them to go and what you need them to know, you can translate that to anybody telling them.
Yeah, that's kind of part of the art of the DM is kind of maneuvering around and getting them where you want them to go, no matter which path they take, right? Like,
And totally
Good old
being able to
improv.
like talk to the enemies, and like even if say you're running a module and it doesn't allow for that, if they get a good enough roll,
I'm just
Consider it.
remembering Strahd.
Oh yeah, so our Curse of Strahd game ended. So Curse of Strahd. Okay, I'm gonna try not to spoil anything from Curse of Strahd. Curse of Strahd involves Strahd. It's his curse. Odds are you fight him at the end of the module. He's basically Dracula in Castlevania. Okay. Amy married him. Okay, so that's how the game ended. All the players got under his control, basically, except for one who just went off and died. And then Amy married him, and then his big MacGuffin reason for doing his evil things, he just kind of like, how to say this without a spoiler? He basically just tricked her into marrying him, and then put the person he actually wanted in her body.
It was probably fine.
So
It happens.
That
cursing-
specifically doesn't sound fine, but like,
Fine.
I won't judge you.
no, it
Just
was
remembering the
fine. Everybody was down to that.
skeleton, Too. The skeleton mook. Like,
Oh, the skeleton mook.
it was so good.
So, do you want to talk about the skeleton mook real quick?
God, I don't remember the specifics of how it happened, but we just started having a conversation with this one skeleton.
that
And
was
we're
the
like,
one that I had not managed to channel divinity on.
Yeah,
that
it was
talking
Brother
about.
Karas that did it, right?
Yeah, and it was just, it was ridiculous.
And then he ended up being an ally because he's like, he turned.
He helped us. I was like arguing with him, like, you got a really terrible working conditions here. Like, what do you mean you serve these people faithfully and then these
You
guys
don't even
murder
get
you and you have to work
dental.
with them?
I don't
Like,
even have
you're working
teeth.
with the skeletons that murdered you?
But maybe
Come
I would have
on.
teeth if I had
Help
dental.
us out.
Oh, also,
And somehow it worked.
3 things that you should be aware of: NPCs lie,
Yeah.
NPCs are wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
NPCs may seem untrustworthy when they're actually trustworthy. So these are things that you can bring across to your players in role playing. I actually constantly will misspeak in character deliberately and act like it was a mistake, but not acknowledge it as a GM. So you have to play on 2 levels, right? So one of my favorite ways to do this is with mind control. James, the other day you were playing in Vampire the Masquerade and you guys were traveling in a Winnebago. And then I said, oh, a car is approaching you from behind. It's been following you for a while. Its headlights are bright in your rearview mirror. It's approaching you. It pulls around. You see it approach the side mirror. You pull into town. The drive was uneventful. And then you turn around and you're like, hey, wait a sec. Kelly, you described that, like, I got out of the car and that he got out of the car and where's our 4th player? I'm like, I don't know. Where is she? You think you dropped her off at home. You can't really remember. Like just omit details, or like lead people into a room and be like, Millie, you look around the room and you find the body of a young girl. She's been murdered horribly. And later you're recounting this story, right? To your boss, and the boss is like, all right, so what'd you find on the body? You explain it, and he's like, girl. No, it was like a 40-year-old man who got killed there. I sent you there just tonight. What? What apartment were you in? Like, give them conflicting details if you do mind control things or memory erasers. Those are so good.
Yeah.
I have kind of a side question, I guess, to lead off that. What does everyone do when players aren't picking up a hint that you're like you need them to investigate to move the story along?
Oh God. Rolls.
Well, that could be a long answer too. Trickery and manipulation, basically. But it's part of how I do prep. All roads lead to plot. I'm gonna put that down too because that's my strategy too. I also do the connect the dots theory where I have a bunch of floating ideas and then whatever way they take kind of meanders that direction. You can also do the Ant-Man rat theory, which is an improbable event draws their attention, like a rat runs from a crack in the wall that reveals a secret door, or a rat hits a button in a warehouse and summons Ant-Man back from the quantum realm type of thing, right? The real hero of Endgame is that rat. I think we had a good question from Robin about problematic players. Is that one that we want to
Let's touch on it briefly. We have a how to be a good PC panel, but like how to deal with problem players seems like its own thing. So yeah, let's do that. Then running, and then all roads.
Also, what do we think a difficult player is also on here.
Okay. Everybody name something you think is a difficult player. Someone who does not engage at all with the game.
Yep.
Ooh. Someone who leans too heavily into it's what my character would do.
I hate that phrase.
Without any flexibility.
Yep.
Someone whose character is too cool to fucking like talk or interact or like do anything. Like, okay, you want to pick a character that's so fucking edgy and dark and like secret and like, okay, but what does that fucking mean? You're just sitting there staring brutally at the camera for an hour. Like,
but are they having fun?
I mean, if everybody's having fun, it depends. If you're laughing out of character about it together, then it's fine. But like,
yeah, somebody's maybe trying to have too much fun by making it all about them and how they want to have fun. So goofy, silly, cracked sort of fun. It's like, this is getting ridiculous. Chill the fuck out.
Anybody who started role playing in the mid 2000s understands fish. It's random waffles. Invader Zim role players.
Holds up spork.
Exactly. Invader Zim girl role players. And it can be funny if that's what you want to play, but those are not long-term games generally.
And I will say it's honestly funnier if only the world is crazy and the players are the straight men, so to speak. That's always funnier where they're just like, I don't know what's going on here.
I enjoy crack treated seriously, honestly, but that's a whole.
Okay, so what else bugs you?
I got one. Characters who cannot deal with failure.
Okay, yeah, so that's the too cool school, like Tasha was saying too. Yeah, that's a subcat category.
Two big ones for me that have been fairly disruptive in unfortunately recent memory have been someone who doesn't respect other players or like the group's boundaries or like intents where we want to go, where we've agreed for tone and that sort of thing with the story, or someone who clearly wants to be the main character, not part of a cast of main characters.
And that can be difficult because you also can accidentally cast someone as a main character at times if you're not careful. And
as a GM you have to be careful. It's like, oh wait, this person's skills are perfect for this interaction, and it's like, okay, wait, I have to make sure it's balanced so everyone else gets a chance to do something cool too.
So spotlighting is exactly the right case. It's a Tiny Poison in the chat just brought up spotlighting. When you're running a game, try to think of it whatever works for you. I think of it like directing a show, and I try to give either equal time or equal weight. Those are not the same thing. So I can give James a 10-minute long scene that has very little weight to it, and I can give Natasha a scene that is a minute long but is super heavy, right? And those basically work out. You will get a gut feeling when they hit about the right level. The trick with good GMing is to always leave them wanting a little more than you give them. Just a tiny bit. Just that last bit of satisfaction on the plate, you deny them until the next time. It's a good trick. If your players enjoy that. My players tend to. I don't know why.
Also showcasing at a larger level, like sometimes running a game that kind of focuses on like one character's experience, but then like kind of rotate through the cast so everyone gets that big showpiece as well.
We
So just
tried
kind
to
of
do
thinking on a
that
bigger scale.
when we were running LARP, right? Because we ran a live action Mage of the Ascension game for about 5-6 years, and we tried to make it so that once the characters were established, everybody got an episode, at least one character episode. Like, Tasha, you had a giant episode where all of your memories were broken into paper cranes that had to be collected, and you were losing your memories. And it was super dramatic because it was also one of your last games with us before you moved away to Ontario. And, or France.
I
No,
definitely
you moved to
remember
France
getting
for that one.
arrested at least
France.
once. That was
Yeah.
a whole thing.
You got arrested. You got arrested a bunch of times. That's what you do.
It happens.
So, like, players who go out of their way to piss off the only town that liked. Okay, so
I think that one is quite tied into the one that I know we all hate, is when somebody does the whole, I'm going to be the smart Doctor Who character sort of thing, who mouths off the big bad and nothing bad happens to me.
yeah, the Whedon dialogue. We have had that in games many times
character.
because we're all nerds and we all want to feel like Doctor Who. We all want to feel like David Tennant's Doctor Who in particular, right?
Yeah.
Or we all want to feel like the snarky badass who drops the lines that like totally disarm the situation. And I don't think players realize how much that can deflate things. We had something actually come up mildly in our Shards of Nirn game where the characters are becoming desensitized to things. So it's like, oh yes, you see a bunch of human sacrifice and you have all this stuff and giant snake men and undead, and they're just like,
Again, what is this, Tuesday?
why is it always on a Wednesday? Actually, why is it always on a Wednesday? So what do you guys think about that? Like, what do you? Oh, the lone wolf is awful, Karantov, and that's difficult. But so, what is your opinion for, say, the Wheaton characters? Let's go through these. Let's go through these in random order. So, how do you deal with the smartass player? The smartass character player. Character.
That one's
Okay.
hard because you kind
That's
of have
hard.
to talk to the person. You can try and
Yeah,
mitigate it in
'cause-
game, but if they keep doing it, you don't want to necessarily call them out in front of everybody, because some people will get very defensive and react badly to essentially being called out.
Oh, I think that's a side note too. In general, talking to players in front of the group versus talking to them outside of the group for specific issues.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like, I guess I'm thinking from a player perspective here for the sort of mouthing off. It's if I'm the one doing it, I know full well that I'm probably about to get beat down because it's stupid. And it's a conscious choice.
Yeah. Well,
But
yeah.
it's difficult because not every player acknowledges that.
Well, and I think often there's sort of like this veneer of assumed safety in game because it's, the plot doesn't go for the big bad crushing your bones and paste to feed their goats because you're not there in the plot yet. So if you're lippy and attempting to attract attention, like it feels like you should get away with it.
Plot armor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the assumed plot armor that I think can kind of encourage it. And I've struggled with this too, where it's like, well, I want to hit them with a stick, but not a bad stick, so that this feels like a real reaction. And they need to be at the tavern in like the next 15 minutes so we can get to the next thing.
Yeah, so you have your checklist, right? I think the checklist is important, but it also can be really disempowering as a story device because then you end up becoming a story-focused game rather than a character-focused game, and that can be fine.
Yeah.
But I actually had a problem. So should I bring up last night? So we had a
I
character
didn't
last
see last night, so I will have spoilers if you
who
do.
went to visit and go do some shopping at the shop of someone who was a named ally, who was a fence, right? Fence being someone who sells illicit goods, basically like a pawn shop owner, but with a little more evil. And the player got into a brief like joking argument and sent their robo familiar to go smack the guy as a like little, it's a flying robot familiar, it's gonna go smack him up a bit. Except that the dude was, for one, he's a fence. He's a criminal who hires goblin shopkeepers to like work around him. The goblins immediately started attacking because their boss had just been struck. Like, they didn't see this coming. They just looked up and this little robot was punching their boss. So they started like pelting it with sling bullets and almost blew it up. And it turned into this thing. Like, the guy calmed them down. But, and I don't know. Like, I felt a little bad about it. Because I was like, oh, like, I'm sorry, player. I don't want to throw you down like this. I know he's your, like, this character's supposed to be friendly to you. But, like, what did you expect to happen? Like, right?
And that's hard because,
That's
like,
hard because you don't know what the dynamic between that NPC and that character is if it's the first interaction. So if you have a vastly different idea of what the relationship is with this first interaction, it...
However, most people would not accept being struck in the face by a friend
That's true.
regardless.
That
Like,
was
if
my
James,
thought,
if you
right?
came up and slapped me, I'd probably hit you back.
Yeah.
Or at least
Fair,
scream in
yeah.
your face.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's like,
One
it's
thing
not,
I would-
it's not an accepted interpersonal action in real life. So
True.
why would it be kind of... It's a movie interaction is
This
what
is
it
back
is.
to that bar
Yeah.
fight thing where it's like in real life someone wouldn't take this to lethal. Like in real life someone wouldn't respond this way.
It might
they-
happen
and
accidentally.
They didn't attack
But
the
that's
player.
your
They just
plot.
attacked the robot that did the damage, right? Like, I didn't have it spill over to the player because I was like, well, the player is literally just standing there with their hands in her pockets, right?
One
Or-
thing I might toss in there would be
please.
like, this is almost comes down to like player, like kind of player GM training. Like at least with my players, like over time, I'll start to I almost kind of come up with this way of communicating kind of low key how a relationship should work. So it's kind of like an underhanded be like, are you sure about this? Like, you know, you can start sending them danger signals once you kind of get to know your group.
That's the old GM standard. Are
Yeah.
you sure?
Are you sure? Right? Like that's the deliberate version of it.
Please
But like,
confirm that you wish to delete everything on the C drive.
yeah. I do something like you know, if the shop keeps standing there and is kind of like glowering at the character, and the character's like, I think I'm going to send my robot over there to do that, and I'm like, and you notice the shopkeeper tapping his hands, the flesh on the back of his knuckles, well worn and covered with scars and calluses. This is a man who knows the blood pits.
I think
And that's such a great narrative
like-
way to do the same thing in a less like
yeah. And it keeps the immersion,
Yeah.
but it's the are you sure about this?
so.
you notice.
So that actually
But at the
expands
same
into.
time, sometimes these end up being much bigger confrontations besides just, say, shopkeep. Sometimes you have the player mouth off to somebody you've described as the dark evil sorcerer that's going to kill the land sort of thing. Is like, what reason do they have not to kill you?
Oh, at that point, I would say none. Like,
Like,
have at it, right?
I've
Like,
seen that happen in games. It's just
teachable
like-
lesson. I usually save the players somehow, but I usually make them like they may leave something behind.
Yes, I think that is absolutely the case. So for new dungeon masters, game masters, death is easy. If you actually piss the Dark Lord off enough that he's going to be like, you know, you walk up to you're like, I don't know. Hey, Dark Lord, you're a big smelly butthead. Do you know what it's like to be a big smelly butthead? Perhaps you'd like to know. And then turns your head into a butt forever. Right? But like basically like remember, like especially when you're in combat, your characters go down and you're like, oh, you die. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Oh, you fade to black.
You fade to black. Okay. Remember, most evil races in D&D, like most evil, they're kind of fading out of that. But let's say like for example, the mind flayers are way more likely to take you for a snack later, or enslave you. And then you have another plot where you're like, oh, hey, you have to escape. Or maybe you are harmed in some way that isn't lethal. Maybe you're given a long-term disease. Also, make sure your players aren't dealing with any body horror personal things. Like if their mother's sick, maybe don't give them like something synonymous with cancer. You just know your players before that. But lasting effects that drive the plot, like you mouthed off the Dark Lord, so he made it so that you can only speak lies. And you have to have this curse broken. There you go. Cool. Or maybe you're a werewolf now. I don't know. So you can do cool stuff like that. But what do you... So on what I was talking about last night, I feel like that was it just kind of spun out a little bit, which happens sometimes in games. But I think that is a baby example of a player getting really caught up playing a new character and really excited, and letting the character grab the reins out of their hand for a minute, which sounds weird, but when you're in character and you're really trying to do kind of like a method character acting, it's very easy.
And you're sort of exploring the boundaries of what you can do in a very open world, right? Yeah.
So what is your advice to a GM when, and this is kind of a subcategory of, it's what my character would do? What is your advice for that?
I mean, I think for me, a lot of this comes into discussion, I would say, in advance with the group about, like, role playing in general, and sort of like, I mean, I would go with the principle of yes and. So making sure that your goal as a player there is to be part of the story and to build it together more than to focus on like a rigid narrative. Your character should be a little bit flexible, because they need to be, in order to be a character that changes and grows anyways. And it can encourage people to shake it up a little bit. So if you're the paladin and you're with a group who are going into the town full of undead who are like pretty nice undead, you're like, my god would command me to smite this entire town of the undead.
I am feeling slightly called out on this one.
I was not even thinking of that. And you went to the town of the undead, and it was the whole thing, and that's the fun character stuff.
In my defense, like, that town that you dragged me into, and my god was literally like, kill undead. That was his thing,
that's fair. That's fair.
If it was anything else, I could have swung it.
All right, Tosh.
I feel like this ties back, like someone in the chat was talking about, like, one-note characters. Like, okay, yeah, like, sometimes you have to remind the players that, like, just because your character has something they're all about, in reality, no one acts the exact same way in every situation. Like, they respond to nuance. They do things differently. They do explore different ways of responding to situations. No one does the exact same thing every time, and your character is allowed to do different things.
Because you do not have their full brain in your brain.
Yeah.
I would also
instead of falling into a stereotype.
Just sort of in that same vein of, like, they don't have to do the same thing every time. It's like, you can, if it makes more sense to do something that seems out of character, we are really good at rationalizing our behavior even if it's out of character. Like, if we do something, we're like, hey, that's not, like, I'm not like that, I wouldn't do that, and then you do.
Yep.
And also, people are hypocrites. Like, they do things they didn't think they would do.
Exactly.
Yep. And then they rationalize, like Amy said, right?
Well, because it was me, it was different. Like, I had to do it because of X, Y, and Z.
You just don't understand you don't understand why I did it.
Complex moral code.
I didn't help the beggar because I hate beggars, not because...
Because a beggar once looked at me funny.
Because I don't have any money right now, except you know that the person has enough money, they can go do something else, and you're like, well...
I feel like that's an advanced role-playing thing, though, that players kind of have to learn, and you can walk them to... You can take them to the water, you can't make them drink type of thing. But
I often describe it as, like, the small sacrifice. Like, it's like, yes, okay, I'm asking, like, I would sit them down, and I would talk to them and be like, yeah, okay, I know that's what you think your player would do. Sorry, what your character would do. But it's not the best thing for the entire experience for everyone, right? So yes, I know you're squeezing a little bit more out of it for yourself, but it's at the diminishment of everyone else. So tone it back a little bit, and then everyone else's experiences will come up, right? Like, it's...
I think...
I guess it depends on what sort of game you're running, too. Like, are you running one that's being streamed? Well, maybe you need to, like, send something privately in the chat, just, hey... this is kind of going this way, like, I'm gonna have to smack you down if you go this way, because that's what the NPC would do. They're not gonna take that sort of disrespect. But if it's, say, if you're all around a table in person, you're not streaming, nobody else is included, it's just the game, then potentially it's a thing of, like James was saying, lead into, like, are you sure? Sort of thing, kind of saying, are you sure this might have a really bad reaction or something? Just being clear. Like, there's no point trying to keep immersion if that means you're not giving your player a hint of bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, if they're not picking it up.
Right? Like, don't let them just
ruin their own game
thing and kill themselves when you could have hinted, because then it's going to feel not fair to them.
Yeah.
Amy.
Even though they're the
warn
ones
me.
doing it, it's going to be a very
Tried.
sour experience to them, potentially. And I mean, if it's the first time it's happening, and they're not taking the hint at all, let them get away with it for that time, maybe, and then talk to them after the game privately.
Rush with death.
Don't call them out in front of everybody. Don't be like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? Because all it's going to do is put somebody on defensive. It might ruin a friendship. Might ruin your game because they might leave because they feel too embarrassed or upset. Like, it depends on the person.
Like,
some people take that really, really well and it's like, oh, yeah, no, fair.
Yeah.
I've
People
gotten
will
into
get
arguments
really
before
embarrassed
about
and
that.
upset. So,
Like,
And
hopefully
some
be able
players
to-
want to like push you and they want to like, you know, like get to that point where the DM kills them. And it's like, that's just what some players want to do.
But
and
then
I think you need to have that conversation before the game starts too, because if you're going into it with that goal to die and create a new character, changing characters constantly quite often breaks game immersion.
well, I mean, and in
Yeah,
my
it's just
games,
not fun.
usually I don't allow it. Like, if you die, you're dead.
Yeah.
So,
So-
It's like, do
Sorry.
you really want out of the game that much? Then
Amy,
why are you here?
You've had your hand up for a while, Amy.
Crap, I can't remember exactly what I was gonna say, but it's something to do with. Well, yeah, just like encourage. I would really hope that you'd be able to encourage your players to talk to each other and check in with each other about how a scene is going, if it seems to be going a certain way. Like, I feel like, especially if it's not on stream, being able to like pull out and go like, when you're going into are you sure you want to do this, and then also check with the players and be like, hey, where do we want to take this? Like,
Okay, and you can do that. Like, it's a narrative experience. And the thing is,
you can
that
talk
doesn't
to each other.
that doesn't break immersion, right? Now, to get a little more mature for a second, because we're going to talk about a lot of this in the inclusivity, mature, and consent panel tomorrow. It's basically the same as anything else in life. It doesn't break the mood for you to take a step back, and this is romantic, role-playing, anything in life, and say, hey, do you want to keep going this way, or do you want to do something else? I'm open for anything, or I'm not open for this. Are you cool? Because I want to keep spending time with you. And it doesn't have to be a big deal, right? It's like, to get slightly more mature for a second, it's the old, like, well, asking for sexual things, like asking for a condom breaks the mood. No, it doesn't. What? Like, literally, you're like, can I have the device that allows us to continue this thing? Right? It's the same thing with role-playing. It's like, would you like to... Okay, are you sure you want to confront the big bad evil guy at level 2?
Yeah. But also,
Are you sure? Because we can!
Yeah. But
Short
bring
chronicle.
the rest of the players into that conversation too. So like, if you've got one character that's acting that way, being able to bring everyone into that conversation and be like, okay, so...
Tiny Poison in the chat just brought up one of my favorite things, and it's the post-session talk. There are two ways I've seen this done really well. One is in City of Mist. At the end of the game, it's actually a mechanic. You gain extra experience, or you gain experience. It's been a while since I played it. But during the credits of the episode, everybody shouts out the highlight reel from the episode. You don't talk about your own stuff. You talk about other people's stuff, and you bring up things that were really cool or really impactful, or, oh, I really loved it when James went and visited his son in game and they had that really harsh confrontation. Oh, and I really loved it when Millie finally, like, her character started working on her dissertation and actually, like, started, you know, etc., right? And we've done it as well in live action play. We did this one game called Sarcophagus. And the long story short
that was good.
is that it's about a bunch of people. Air raid sirens go off because there's a nuclear event. The characters all go, I think we had like 10 characters. All of them go to a bunker. And they're inside of this bomb-proof bunker that has like a filtration air system, and the power dies, including their doors, and the air system goes off. And it's a game about accepting death. Like, that is the end of the game, is that the lights are out, you're in the dark. We roleplay this. I filmed part of it. It's pretty rough.
It was brutal.
I cried so hard.
You do.
I apologize for the character I played.
You played a real dick, and it was great because you kept stirring the pot.
Good.
You did a good job.
And it's the most hopeless game you've ever played. But at the end of it, it is a core part of this live action game, which is more like an improv theater exercise than anything, but you can use this in your tabletop game. At the end of it, everybody sat in a circle, and we went around in a circle, starting, I think I started it just for comfort, because I was running it, and you do not have to speak if you do not want to, and you can always bead con back to. But it was, you get 5 minutes on a clock, you can say whatever you want, no one will say anything. No one will try to like, no one can talk but you for 5 minutes. And we will listen to you. Nobody has their phones out. It's you. It's your time. You can choose to use it or not. And you can choose to end early. And the stuff we got out of that 5 minutes from everybody was, not everybody talked, but some of the people really got a lot out of it. And we really, like, that was a real bonding experience, I think. Millie, you'd love this game. It's awful.
Yeah,
and it's free.
That sounds amazing. I would love the heck out of that.
It's
It's
awful.
not for every group or every person though, because man, that thing was an experience.
Yeah.
And where we did it also really made a big difference.
Yeah, we had a place where I could actually shut the lights off and then rig it with like red emergency lights, and then I keep pulling the plugs so they'd whoop whoop. It was great. Tasha, then Millie is the way that we.
I wanted to say, and like one thing I appreciated a lot about Kelly's games, like especially your LARPs, like you always like practically deliberately structured time after a game to be like, yeah, we're actually going to like talk about this kind of stuff. And like, if you're running a game, like making sure if a couple of people have to leave early or leave at a specific time, like try to end, 20, 30 minutes prior to that point. So you guys can sit and chat, like be intentional about creating time for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I appreciate this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Millie?
I think that's such an important part of like working as a cohesive group. And I want to circle back to a question.
We've got a lot of questions.
Chef,
yeah.
I think Chef earlier that I saw that I thought related to something we sort of touched on but didn't talk too much about, which is about group cohesiveness, where they tend to split apart depending on alignment and that sort of thing. And I just want to say, like, circling back to what we were talking about like, making a character that fits the group and keeping the group dynamics and the group story in mind when you're making character decisions. I think that's the root of it. Because I've had the opposite experience to you, Chef, where like evil groups tend to split immediately and good groups split a little bit later. But I think the core of it is that when you're making characters, you probably want to do that in communication with each other, and maybe even talk about your goals with this character, where you want them to go, how you envision them fitting into the group, so that you end up with something cohesive from the start, and you're not struggling to come up with justifications to keep the characters together throughout a campaign, especially if you've got like differing alignments or something like that. Like, are you a chaotic, neutral, I don't know, thief who's in the game with a paladin? Why do you get along? Are you brothers?
I also think
do you
it's good to
tolerate each other
remind
because of
players
that? What is the reason
sometimes.
you're a cohesive group?
To remind players sometimes that they could just like other characters. Like sometimes like groups stick together for no reason. Like in reality, sometimes people stick together for no reason other than they just kind of like that person, even though they really shouldn't.
Okay, so on this, one really good strategy for keeping groups together is to not have plot-related episodes occasionally, where the characters have a little baby plot, but it's something stupid or fun. In our really long-running 3-season-long game, we have tons of filler episodes deliberately. So the characters go and have to compete in like a singing competition. Like they get forced into it. Or there's a beach episode where the characters all go to the beach and like go shopping together and spend time together. But you tailor it to the group. But you put them in situations where people bond, and then you like let people be silly, give them a chance to be silly, so that even the like Dark McBrood, like if Broody McDarkass is at the beach, make the character be like, all right, so you're at the beach, what are you wearing? I'm like, okay, you're really hot, are you gonna take your shirt off? And then like, oh, all like some local girls or boys are flirting with you now, Broody, and what do you react? I'm too dark. And one of them walks up, and then baby Lydia Dietz from Beetlejuice walks by and is like, I'm too dark to notice you. And then you kind of like see it, you play off that, like, I don't know, she's ignoring you, man. She's darker and more broody than you. Right? Like, give them a chance to be a little silly.
Brood off.
Well, and it's like
And give them a
also
chance to play to their character's strengths, what they wanted that character to be when they created them.
Well, and also don't necessarily pigeonhole your character from the beginning. Because like, look at Shards of Nirn.
Yeah.
Our game, right? Because like, it's gone very much that Nirn is like the big bad as far as we're aware. Like there's starting to be hints that that's maybe not. However,
Who knows?
Goddess of
that
Darkness.
has been our enemy that we've been working towards this whole time. And now Winter's character is her priestess.
Yep.
And I am the priestess of the
rival.
opposing goddess. Like,
Who knows what's
but
happening
we've
with
been
Tia, I
working
don't know.
together for so long that when I got told that, I was kind of like, well, I guess I still like you.
I gotta keep my eye on you, but
I'm keeping
Invested.
an eye on what you're doing now.
As a
but
kind of DM
still care
trick,
about you.
if you want to see a player's character actually evolve, like we were talking about players who get stuck in like a one note thing or kind of not evolving, give that player a chance to really hardcore express what they wanted that character to be, and then they're going to be more likely to be like, okay, well, I did that, now I want to do something new, and they'll naturally move into something.
I like
And
that.
also for like group cohesion, if something happens in game that is going to maybe make it so that a character's like, well, why the fuck would I stay there? Talk it out as players, like explain the character's reasoning. Because like we had that happen in Rhyme, and I was like, look, based on X, Y, and Z, why would she stick around? And then we worked out, okay, well, how are we going to do this so it makes sense for all the characters? How are we going to resolve it in character? And kind of had a bit of a rough talk out of like, okay, well, this is what that character would want. This is what that character could do, and kind of brought it together so that we could move forward with the plot as a group.
Yeah, sometimes you have to pull it out of character so you can actually play with it in character.
and
Yeah.
sometimes characters leave. Like sometimes they do. I think that for a lot of players that have these type of disagreements in characters, for one, have the session 0, build your characters all together. Or if you get stressed out by that, for example, some of my players don't like to build in front of other people, but brainstorm in front of other people a little bit, or make sure that everybody's concept is on the table before they go off to do their building, either with you or by themselves if you trust them. And then have a session 0 where you all sit down and talk about what you want from the game. You build a social contract, right? So it's like, okay, so what do you guys want out of Reign of Emeries? We did an episode 0. It's on our YouTube right now. You can watch it. So it's like, what do you guys want? Do you want airships? Cool, we can do airships. So we want kind of like a steampunk magic punk thing. Cool. Does that mean like this is going to be about an empire? This means that we're going to be dealing with notes of colonialism. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, what type of colonialism are we dealing with? Because I am more comfortable dealing with like neo-Roman colonialism than I am dealing with like European colonialism, like Renaissance onward colonialism, right? Classical is less painful for a lot of people, right? Okay, yeah, so we discussed all this, and you build your characters based on that. And then it ended up being like, we had 2 characters who both wanted to be an artificer. And normally, I don't like doubling up unless the players are down with it, basically, because the players have to agree if there's a double up on anything. Even if they're elves, I'm like, okay, are you sure you're both cool with that? Nobody wants to be the special elf snowflake. Okay, cool.
Because if you're playing an elf, you want to be the special elf snowflake.
Right? If you didn't, you'd be a
Either
half
that,
elf.
or you both want to play it so that you can talk with each other behind everybody else's back.
Yeah. Which
And be like the little cliquey group in the corner of the main group.
So you have these discussions, and then I talked to the players, and like one of them was like, "I want to be an artificer who is an artiller, so I can blow stuff up. I want guns and do cool." That was your sibling, Tosh.
No.
And then we had another player who's like, "Oh, I'd rather be more of an alchemist." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Well, we could totally do that."
Yeah.
I know what type of person you are, Robin. Have you considered the Blood Hunter class? Oh, what's that? Oh, it's a class that Matt Mercer made that's basically an alchemist witcher. And she took a look at that, and like 5 minutes later was like, I have changed my mind. So like that kind of thing, I think that like that could be really good. Have that session 0. And then if your characters are having trouble working together, particularly if they're dice role play rather than character roleplay focused, make a big deal out of assists in character and out of character. So, like, for example, most recent Rime of the Frostmaiden game, an NPC managed to use hold person on the big bad. I was great because the dude had been whiffing the entire game, and finally he's just like waiting. He's like, I know this guy's invisible. He's coming out. The dude comes out, casts Eldritch Blast. He's like, bullshit. He's played by Adam Driver in my game, too, so stop. You will stop now. And it was suddenly paralyze, and then our friend Hayden's turn came up, and they hit the bad guy point blank in the forehead with a fireball. It was that 1-2 punch, right? They got the kill, but they got the kill because of the paralyzation. Otherwise, it would have been a coin toss. And that teamwork, that camaraderie is really important, but celebrate the person who sets it up and be willing, like tell your players that it's even better to be the person that sets it up. Or if your characters are more mechanics heavy, award them a bonus on their next roll if they do not succeed. We use a feature in our chat because we allow people to buy things with points called determination. Basically what it is you get a point of determination. You can spend it to gain your proficiency bonus again. If you already have it, it's doubled. If you don't have it, you get it for the first time. But you could say, you know, Christine, you went left and swung your sword, thereby granting James advantage on his strike. On your next roll, you're going to gain determination for free because you helped the party. You can do that.
Quick note: the extra life link is wrong.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, you've got an extra T in extra.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
Yeah,
not
that's
working.
I can fix that in 1 second.
Extra.
Okay, it is,
Extra.
it is now fixed.
But extra T. And yeah, giving a setup for making assisted actions cool, like making it be an option is good, but also part of that though is that as the GM or DM, knowing what your characters can do really, really well, so that you can give them situations that they could do it in.
Yeah,
But
to
also
give them like
as-
conflicts or situations or enemies that will play to those abilities.
Like the room, like say you're in a room for a fight, like it has to have a variety of stuff in it so that people can come up with tactics or have enough space for tactics or anything like that. So like, you do kind of have to help figure that out, because like we've had a few situations, like we do try, like in a lot of the games on Dork Tales, like I am trying to talk with my fellow players and all that sort of stuff about coming up with tactics and trying to figure out ways that we can work off of each other. And it is hard. And we have had some good ones.
As a DM, I find environmental things to be very difficult. I think that walking into a room every time and having to describe every single thing in the room to be very mentally taxing. Because a lot of times the players will put you in a situation where you have to improv it. You know, you can't have a binder with every possible room in it and every possible item in it. You can have a lot of random generated charts if you'd like, but it does take a lot of the time. And I think I found the easiest solution to this, which I encourage everyone to do. It's a community-based game. You're playing with your friends, hopefully. You're playing with a bunch of people, probably. You walk into a room. It's about 15 feet wide by about 13 feet deep. It looks like a bedroom of some kind. You're looking for the documents that are inside of here. There's a bed, there's a nightstand, and one of the players says, well, is there a dresser? Sure. What kind of dresser is it? Ask your players. Let them contribute to the scene, and if it's something that doesn't fit it, say, actually, you're close. It's a little more like this, actually, I think. Right? Yes, but is the best trick that you can ever learn, where it's, you know, I want to play a sentient dog. Okay, well, would you settle for a dog man? That's kind of like a sentient dog. Or maybe you have, like what about the sentient dog do you like? Like, I just want to play a blink dog. Okay, well, that's not a targeted aiming. I've had a couple people play blink dogs. But ask your players to do input. The moment that you offload some of the mental energy of being creative onto your players, they are invested. And they are helping you not get a migraine at the end of every game, because that's a lot to keep up there. And just make sure they know no automatic victories. Like, they can't just be like, what's on the desk? The master key to the treasure chest with 9 million gold in it. And you're like, great joke.
Wishful thinking.
You're
Can I-
right.
can
There
I,
is a
like-
key. You think it looks pretty important, but
Yeah. Millie?
Really, an evil snake. Can I
not-
riff on what you were saying about getting players involved too? Because I know
Riff.
we had a couple questions earlier that we probably haven't gotten to yet because we're not really talking about prep about
Yep.
getting new players involved, and I think that that's
Yes.
actually a really really good way to get new players to feel some ownership about the game. And there are some systems out there that specifically do this, and one of my favorites for it, and the system is like pretty solid, but the way it starts is just amazing, which is the sprawl, which is the Powered by the Apocalypse system where your players build the setting by choosing different mega corporations that exist in the world and that are antagonists. And those corporations can dictate whether or not you're in space or on a planet. The kind of corporation that they invent sort of brings in tones and themes and all of that stuff into the game and gives them a sense of ownership over one of the villains. And then collectively, they have all now built the setting that you're in. Which I think is so cool, because then as the storyteller, like you have maybe a basic plot, maybe all of that sort of stuff, but the world that it takes place in now has so much life that you didn't have to make yourself.
Yeah. And like ask players to give you stuff before game. Like before your first game, I send out a Google form survey a lot of times when we're building a new setting, and it'll have a question like provide 3 people in your character's life that they like. Give me some details. Like I want to know if it's D&D, give me like some races, ages, and like class if it's relevant. And it's like, oh, my mentor's an elven wizard from Charlaloo, who is kind of gruff and tough on me. And then you go, okay, give me 3 people in your life that you have to deal with that you don't like.
But and then again, as a DM, like remembering to actually like use that at some point, because there's nothing worse as a character, as a player, than like spending like, you know, an hour coming up with this like intricate backstory or person who's important in their character's life, and then it literally never means anything to the rest of the story. And it's like, why did I fucking waste all that time?
Well, don't make them waste
So
a lot of time.
remembering to use that info.
So
I think that's a variable between the player, because like, for example, I absolutely love coming up with those like huge ass backstories. My apologies, Kelly. You know, you've been many pages.
James is the reason why I have a rule when I ask big questions. I have a paragraph
I'm
limit.
sorry. But I don't mind if that stuff doesn't come up, because what it does is it shapes it for me.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true. There's different
shapes
types of,
my view of the character and my reactions. Beyond that, you know, like I love it when it does come up. I'm not particularly fussed if it doesn't. Like that's fine too. I've already gotten the real value out of it.
Well,
Which
that's
is
the thing between like players too, is like I'm completely opposite from James. I can't come up with a backstory because if I do, I can't play the character.
Yeah.
If I try and plan out the character before we actually start playing, I can't do it. It just does not work. The character feels flat and awful, and I hate them.
feels like too stiff.
Oh yeah, like,
before the
so
first
basically,
voice
like,
comes out, right?
Yeah.
So it is like I'm over the last 2 games have learned Claudette for Reign of Emeries. Like I'm starting to build her as we play. So it's more as situations come up, I will in that moment make a decision on how she'll react. So I'm happy with having like a questionnaire like Kelly has done, where it's like, give me 3 people you're friends with, names, race,
Basic
female,
personality
male, whatever.
traits if you'd like. Like if they're non-binary, let me know so that I have that representation in there, or
but
any
I don't know
any
who
other
those
thing.
people are yet.
Yeah.
So
And
it's like, I gave Kelly for Reign of Memories the names of my parents, the name of my brother. I came up with a brother, but all there is a name,
so
and the fact that there's a brother.
here's
survey-
Kelly
particularly
created
good-
everything else.
here's a look behind the screen right now, guys. So there's the cast, there's the supporting cast as it is. Okay, and these are all the notes I need. Katya, Green Dragonborn, quickened to House Belmont, which in our system means that she graduated and was assigned to them out of the orphanage. And then I've got a little note that says it is connected to Amy's character. And then, let's see, Crispin and Amalia Belmont, Claudette's parents. Adelis Morningthorn, half-elf instructor of necromancy, and evocation. This is all you need. Okay, my notes. Oh, also, another hint. Have something like this. You know what this is? This is a list of names. When I have forgotten to name a character, I either number these. Sometimes I number them really well. Sometimes I have these weird, like, charts that I I like that I've got all the way to 9. You can see that I put more here than I expected, so I added an addition, but I forgot that the dice go to 10 for some reason. So I ran out of space. But
Let's go, 9-sided dice.
I use random generators like crazy because random generators do the exact same thing that a coin toss does. If you are ever not sure of something, what to do in a situation, decided on a coin toss, because whether or not you take the outcome, you know which one you want the moment it's in the air. The same with a generator. If you roll something, you look down, and you're like, that's not the name, but the one under it's I like, so I'm going to change what I rolled. Do it. I have an entire binder there called the Lazy GM's Guide. It's just generators I stole from online and some great sites, and I use them like crazy when I'm stuck because it gets the gears going.
Inspiration.
Yeah. I will say that the survey is like just a great kind of tool go between like Christine and my style, right? Like it serves us both. It is either plot hooks for you or a writing hook for me, right? So it works either way.
And some Tiny Poison is great. By the way, good job, Tiny Poison. So they have
Good job on being great.
a one-page max on their character stuff. So one of my problems was I would ask for a character background and someone would give me like 10 or 20 pages. And this isn't just you, James, like other people would do this. And then I wouldn't read them because in that time, I was running a LARP with like 13, 14 people in it. I was going to grad school. I was working 2 jobs. I was starting up a Twitch channel. I didn't really have much time.
2 jobs? I think you're working more than that.
I'm trying to sound realistic. Nobody wants to hear that I had 8 jobs at once while I was doing my last undergrad, and running 4 games, and dating you. So, but you're pretty low maintenance. You'd have to be for that. You'd have to be pretty chill. Also, you were in all the games, so that helped. So
that's what your narrator staff was for.
So encourage people to do it thesis style, where they can write as long of a background as they want, but all the pertinent information needs to be on page 1. Like I need to get the summary on page 1. Give me an abstract.
And you can ask how you set up your questions or do that.
Also, if they're submitted to you digitally, you can just do a search. So later, if you're like, oh, well, you're looking for, hold on, I need a name real quick. You're looking for, or you're contacting your old friend, MacLeod Sharp. Who the hell's MacLeod Sharp? Oh shit, he thinks I read the thing. 1 sec. Control F. MacLeod. Oh, you didn't spell it the same way every time. Damn it. Okay. Yes. You think back to the time fishing with MacLeod as a child because he's your uncle, I mean. Like, just wing it, guys. It's a game. Everybody's having fun. Your Funkle. Your Grunkle? Okay, so we got about 15 minutes left before we got to start prepping for the next panel.
Oh, geez, time flies.
I know, right? This is why this is fun. So, running away. Encouraging your players to run away was one that came up, as well as encouraging your players. Do you guys prefer it when characters speak at... So, ways of describing scenes for players. What do you prefer to hear? I'm curious. I walk into the room and look around, or Salvador walks into the room and looks around. Do you prefer first or third person narration from your players? I'm curious if you have an opinion. I prefer first.
The players, I think I really helps with
too.
immersion, but if someone really naturally defaults to another, I'm not going to,
I think that people, they describe third person when they're less comfortable acting.
And again, working with brand new players, like it's kind of like, okay, help them get into it.
I find different games do different things too, right? Like D&D, I tend to find a third person, but with other ones like Mage and stuff like that, it's first person. Like it's.
I think it depends on the level of like immersion in the game, which in D&D games tends to be a bit more. My character does this. Claudette does this.
Well,
but I'm also defaulting to that a little bit because we're streaming and having had that person leave us that lovely comment about not being able to see.
100%.
So
I was also going to say, as a player too, like to have the other characters call out their character's name and stuff, it can like be more like, oh yeah, okay, I'm really starting to get into my head what that character is.
Yeah, and if we're not stating who's acting, not everyone can pick the voices apart and know who's talking. So if I'm saying I do this, someone might not realize that if they're listening, that I'm speaking for lead-in. Like,
Yes, and then you get problems with players who are doing things like, ooh, I have a pop-up. Pardon me. Who are doing things like misinterpreting things that were said in and out of character. You have teleporting players. That's always a fun one. Teleporting or telepathic.
Oh yeah.
Which
yeah,
is
sometimes
something
I
out
have
of
to
character.
check in and be like, wait, am I in this scene, in this part of the scene, because I missed something between point A and B. Sorry. Please remind me, am I here?
I hate it when characters are just like, so some character finds something interesting and the other character's like, ooh, and suddenly they're right, like that drives me mad. Like,
yes.
no,
That's-
you were not rifling his pockets.
You
with
are
that
not
guy
even in
right
the
now.
same building. Like, you're not in the same
Yeah.
city.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah, sometimes it's
that's
an
something
accident,
of just like
but
that probably actually should be something for like good player habits. Don't make your DM cry sort of panel.
Well, but
Yeah.
how do you
later.
yeah, how do you address that if you're having players doing that?
Because that's partially a thing of like, depending on how egregious it is and how often it is, it's a conversation. I think it's just it's having a frank conversation of kind of like, depending also on how well you know that person. Like, say I'm running my Pathfinder game that James and Kelly were both in. I think Amy was too.
Yeah. Maybe?
No,
I
I don't
wasn't in
remember for sure now.
Pathfinder. Mm-mm. I was
Which
in your
game
D&D game, the
Right.
Storm King's Thunder.
Oh, it was
So
Zoe
many
and Ryan that were in the other one.
Mhm.
James keeps getting involved in the same roles as somebody else. It would be a thing of, hey, James, so I notice that you're doing this a lot. Are you, like, is that deliberate? Like, are you just hanging out with that person a lot and trying to, like, go around with them and mentor them? Or am I not paying enough attention? Are you not getting enough? I'm kind of leaving you alone because you're a veteran role player. Yada
But
yada.
also
right?
just being willing to be like, you're not there. Like you're
Yeah.
in the other room. You can start walking in that direction if you'd like, but
Yeah.
like just being like, nope.
Yeah.
Or just being
Sometimes
like,
people
you're
do
not
just
there
forget.
yet.
Yeah.
You're just not there.
Exactly. And that's a lot of times there's like, oh, I thought I was. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also encouraging them to do like assists, like you can't like they're doing a role, but you can help them.
Yeah, you don't
The
know to do a
advantage on the-
perception roll, or
Yeah.
you don't know to do an insight roll. That is something that they're thinking, hey, that seems hinky. I'm going to insight that. You five aren't also inciting.
I heard.
Yeah.
And
You
also
haven't thought that yet.
negotiating when a player's like, well, my character would have done this. It's like, okay, well, let's explore that. Like, what would your character have walked into that room? Would your character have done this? You know, that you didn't
Yeah.
call out that you were doing, but okay, no, actually, your character would have done that. I believe you, or you know.
Yeah, like sometimes the narrative just shifts quickly and someone misses their chance to say something. They're like, I really wanted to do this thing.
Also, that.
Yeah.
But I think that does kind of tie into how you act and describe as a player. I find I describe how the character is moving as third person, but I role play as first person.
Yeah.
So I talk as a character when the character is talking.
So how do you encourage people to start
How do you?
like acting? Like, I mean, first I'd say you discuss whether or not they're comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
But what have you done in the past that's helped, or like as a DM or as a player, for new players?
I mean,
I
some
just
systems
remember-
tie it to experience.
That's true.
Yeah, like I remember just like when I was first starting, like it was really good to have DMs who like would, especially knowing that it's a new character, a new player, especially in a group where other people are experienced, like asking them lots of questions, especially if you can tell they're being quiet. Like just like, oh, well, what do you think your character would think about this? What do you think your character would do? What do you think, you know, you would respond? Like, would you talk to people? Would you do X, Y, and Z? Like give them suggestions and try to really help them think through the process.
I
And
find
also
it
some of that requires
Kelly
a-
encourages it
sorry.
by just being like, okay, what do you say?
Yeah. Yeah.
I find a little
And-
initiative order thing which works pretty well too. Sorry, I'll be really quick. Just like going around the
Yeah.
table and give the new player like the last take on it, so they get to see what everyone does, and then they
Oh,
can
for
get to
combat
have an
stuff,
example.
or for
Oh,
social
combat,
stuff?
Anything.
but even in just like social stuff, like you're having a conversation, like you know, you're going over here and investigating that. Cool. You're going to talk to this person. Okay, what are you doing? Right? And it's like, oh, you know, that's my time, and you just train them in that.
It's like you were in a town. What do you do?
Yeah. Let
And
them
actually,
be like
James, I think we're of one mind here. I was about to suggest the same thing. So it requires a bit of attentiveness to how players are feeling and how they're interacting. Because someone might not feel ready to say, I'm going to role play this, or I'm going to have this conversation with the bartender first, especially if they're new to it, and giving them the example of all of the other players who are perhaps more used to it to go ahead of them. And you don't have to do it with initiative like you just said. You can just have the camera flows towards you last.
Or adding
How
an
do you
NPC
feel about
who
this?
prompts that. Like the bartender comes up to you and starts chatting friendly about all this stuff with you.
Yeah, something low stakes like that too is a really, really great introduction to it, because the bartender's not a big scary villain. The bartender's not going to like light their shoes on fire with mind power if they say the
It's
wrong
gonna
thing.
give them a chance
The
to
bartender's going to be
talking
like,
in
okay, I'll
character."
give you a different drink then.
Especially if you could show off rules, if there's going to be some sort of rules going on with that encounter, right? Like I always try to demo them first, because that's the biggest thing I find with new players. They're like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, well, you're just going to go over there and talk to them. That's what you actually want them to do. That's what you're trying to encourage them to do. But they feel that there's rules that kind of are there when they're new, and they don't know how to do them. So they're all intimidated by it. So it's like, I would try to demo like a social action, and then I would have them actually do the social action, or do the rule and then the rule, right? Like scaffold it for them.
Tasha.
Someone in the chat just mentioned, how are you doing that? Which is something that most of the GMs in this chat, like right here, are all really good at, which is like when a character's like, I do this. And then it's like, how do you do that? And instead of putting all of that on the GM to be like, okay, blah, blah, blah happens, and then this happens. How do you do that? Like, what does your character do?
1000% do that. Make sure your players do this in combat. Okay?
Yes.
You don't get away with a one line if you're doing a big action.
Like,
I am
make your
so
players
bad.
pitch. And I constantly, especially because we perform for camera for the stream, try to encourage that, because my God, I get so tired of describing things that other people are doing, and some people hate it. I played with a DM at a convention once who, like, I was literally just like, yeah, I kick him in the side of the head, and the DM went into this flowery, like, 1 minute long description of my kick and how it was actually like a flip kick, and I was doing something completely different, and I'm like, no, he's leaning over, this is a shadow run, I'm gonna knee him in the jaw and then shoot his friend, not gonna do like this like guile flip kick. Like, no, like, don't take my character from me. That really bugged me. But at the same point, it's also really exhausting to come up with those flowery examples, because you burn out all your creativity, which it is a finite resource if you're not.
Especially if you're the DM and you're doing it for 6 characters, etc.
Exactly. So what I
Plus all
try to
the
make my players
NPCs.
do is, Tasha, you are taking, so you have a bow. What do? Describe up to the point of impact. Like, it doesn't hit until I confirm it hits, and then I will basically, you pitch and I make sure that it goes around the plate. Basically, like, yes, Amy.
Oh, it's just like it's. I don't know if anyone else did forum RPs. Wait, like,
Oh yeah.
for
Yeah,
example, like if you were interacting,
Yeah.
you could describe what you were doing, but you couldn't say whether or not it actually hit unless the person let you hit them.
Yep. That's basically the rule, and it
It's
saves you so
also,
much
like,
time.
Giving even just like a rough description of what you do, like, it doesn't have to be fancy and flowery every time. Like, that's something that you can discuss. Like, if your character is the diva bard, then sure, your description, you better come up with it and change it each time. But it can be fancy and flowery as whatever you want, but you also don't have to do that each time. It can be as simple as, I draw my sword and cast with the other hand.
And also reminding characters to talk things out. It's like, well, I asked the bartender for information. Okay, what do you say? Like role play it.
Yeah. James,
Oh, how do you do this?
how do you do it?
At the end, when a kill happens, it's like,
Yeah,
just
you
like
do the
passing
Matt
on
Mercer.
ownership to it. Yeah,
You know,
that's a great way of doing it.
It's fun, and if you get the players really hyped, they'll get really excited about it, and encourage people to shut the hell up while other people are doing stuff, or at least be quiet. Put away your phones, unless you're using them as an app, and then turn off your social media, guys. Seriously, you don't need to be on Facebook or Tinder or something like that in the middle of a game. You should be paying attention to other people's scenes, and try to make the scenes interesting enough that other people want to watch and encourage their friends. But encourage your players to cheer for each other. When when you're rolling D&D and a nat 20 comes in, or you roll a critical success in World of Darkness, like, freak out for your friends. Like, have fun with them.
So,
Actually, I think someone mentioned it earlier, but what about when you have players who chronically roll terribly and want to do, but they want to do cool things?
You have Amy's. You have Amy's.
Yes. That's a good one. Yeah.
Because not everyone takes it as well as I do. I know that.
Well, I think there should be an element of just straight up narration, like screw it, not everything needs to roll to see how well it turns out.
And someone just mentioned in the chat rewarding players for descriptions. Like if they're giving you detailed information and cool, like they're trying their hardest to make their character do stuff, and the rolls just aren't helping, like reward them anyway. Like give them something else.
At least as a GM, in my take on GMing, I cheat. Yeah, no, if it comes down to it,
we didn't get a chance to talk about this yet, but that's a big one.
Oh yeah, but like if behind my screen, right? Like, and I've told my players this before, that I will fudge things for the game's benefit. My bad guys will stand as long as I feel they need to stand. Especially when it matters. When it doesn't matter, I stick to things. But like I also do that going the other way. If someone's just having a really off night, well, dang it, my enemy who's rolling his defense has a worse night. You know, if I compensate for that. I kind of bolster them up a little bit because I have been betrayed by my dice before. Like, imagine the mage game where I'm playing like quite a heavy close combat character, and I got basically my ass handed to me by a guard dog. Like
guard dogs are tough, though.
Guard dog. It just broke me, and I was like, oof, right? Like, you can make up for that behind the screen.
Fun.
Yeah.
But like also it's okay, so Amy is an example. If anybody's watched Dark Tales, they know full well Amy fails at her rolls so often.
You were so last year you were like, Amy, you're not cursed. You're not cursed. Like you just don't say that, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, Amy,
so
just
medium. Then it went downhill even further. But it can be like, okay, Amy's character tried to cast blah, but doesn't manage, so maybe it makes a loud noise, maybe it distracts it, maybe it gives somebody else advantage,
so
or
when
something.
I fail my investigation,
perception
rolls, you're like,
nothing else more.
Good.
There are also a lot of systems
wasting your action doing nothing.
There are a lot of systems where describing things will give you a bonus to the roll as well. Scion does that in stunts. Like the more Ensid is exalted, if you describe your action really well and do something cool, you might get advantage. Don't abuse this too much so that people milk it the whole time. Then you get a bunch of like wire kung fu stuff constantly. Unless you want that.
Except that's exalted, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah, that's literally what exalted is. But so yeah, guys, so apparently I didn't realize this was about Zoom. The next call can't begin until this one ends, so I can't set that call up. So
if we had multiple accounts we could do it, but one account we can't have two going.
So we got to end. So why don't we go ahead and wrap this up? We will be doing more of this over the weekend. We really appreciate you guys joining us. In about 15 minutes, there will be another episode coming in, or another event coming in, called Skill Shot, Learning Your Character Sheet. It's for new players who want to learn their D&D sheets. And what it is, it's a tabletop game, an hour and a half long, ran by our good friend Krista. And it is set in a laser tag arena and should be a hell of a lot of fun. Krista's a really fun DM, and the players are going to be ridiculous. It's going to be ridiculous, and there's even like laser tag backgrounds for the characters and stuff. So before we call it here, I don't know, go say your goodbyes.
The last thing. Oh, sorry.
And list your quick last bit of advice, Tasha.
The last thing I wanted to say was that this is kind of like a storytelling thing in general, which is use coincidences to get your characters into trouble, not out of trouble. Because if you're using coincidence to save them from a battle, it's just a deus ex machina, and it's gonna, like, it doesn't feel rewarding. But if you use a coincidence like, oh, that person you ran into the bar is actually so and so, and now you're in shit, like that's interesting and moves things along.
Nice. All right, who wants to hop in next with their goodbye? Also, you can plug yourself, so go see Tasha at Praline Creative for lots of cool stuff, and that's also all the Praline Creative stuff. I'll put your link tree in next time for when we're back in an hour
I
and a
don't
half.
mind the Twitch and the link and the thing, because my Twitch has a link to the link.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, so who wants to say? So I'll build off Tasha's and say goodbye. So absolutely do that. If you're ever not sure what to do in a situation, ask what would be the most dramatic thing to happen or the worst thing to happen for the players. Always make things more interesting. And if you're doing this in combat, change the stakes every 3 rounds. Otherwise, it gets boring. If the combat's longer than 3 rounds, maybe a third party shows up. Maybe the ground starts shaking. Maybe the building catches fire. Change one element that changes the relationship in the fight.
Very cool. I'll say ultimately it's a game, and hopefully you're friends. So have fun. Have fun with it.
It's good. That's probably the best. That's the best one.
Yeah,
All right.
Amy.
Anybody else? Hop in. We got.
Honestly, I was going to say essentially what Amy said, but have
Be
fun
nice.
with it, come up with cool things, and just be like, hey, here's my idea. Can we make this work?
Exactly.
Just ask. You should be friends. If you're playing together, you're probably friends, or at least wanting to be
Or
friends.
try to make friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
And learn to be a better player, join us for the How to Be a Good PC panel later, where we will rant and rave about bad PC stuff. We spent a lot of time on this one, but this will be good. And Millie, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one piece of advice for if you're a DM and you're trying to hit that exact sweet spot between prep and improv, there is a system that I use for everything called 731 by Jason Cordova. Highly recommend looking that up. It will save your bacon and make you seem fully prepared, even if you are secretly only half prepared. It's an amazing piece of DM self-care, actually, and maybe we should talk about stuff like that at that panel later today. Otherwise, I don't know, if you like professional bunnies, you should follow me. I'm a dork, and I love you all very much, and this is fun. Thank you for having me.
It was wonderful to have you. So folks, we have a bunch of other stuff happening today. We're going into Skillshot. After that, we have Adapting Pop Culture from Tasha and myself, 2 resident pop culture addicts. Also, if anybody else from this panel knows anything about pop culture and would like to join us for that, I don't think either of us would mind. But I know that, Millie, you got stuff tonight.
I'm in a Pathfinder game in 10 minutes.
Okay. If you can join us, anybody, feel free, and we will be seeing you very shortly. Thank you for tuning into the beginning of Dork X. If you have some extra cash, throw it at Extra Life. It helps kids. And if you have a sec, give us a like on social media, give us a follow, give us a sub here or on YouTube if you have the time and means. And we love you. We'll be seeing you all weekend. So hope you enjoyed this and you got some stuff out of it that you can use. We'll be back in 10.
Yeah.
All right.
Talk to you later, guys.
Everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Been fun.